Hello again, RoyZesch.REALTOR with Coldwell Banker Legacy and Financial Loan. Okay, so far in the buying and selling process, I've had one video on the buying process and 2 videos on the selling process. Now we've met together, we have a contract. So today I want to start the process of talking about what happens between the contract and the time the house closes. People tend to think, okay, we were under contract. Either with your buyer or seller, it doesn't really matter. You think we're under contract, we can relax. Nothing could go wrong. Not exactly. There's still some issues that are going to come up. So let's talk about them. First thing is, generally, at least in this area, what you'll have when you have a contract, it will have an option period in it. What this means is you have generally 10 days. It can be whatever you negotiate, but commonly 10 days for the buyer to do whatever they want to do to check the property over, and then during those 10 days, at any point, for any reason or no reason, they can say, no, we don't want to buy the property. So the buyer will actually buy the rights to that option period for a small amount of money that the seller does not have to give back to buy that option period. So, and that's the time that they'll typically do an inspection, figure out what's wrong there, possibly termite inspections, any things like that can come up in that 10-day period. So then what happens is they'll come back, once they've got the inspection done, for example, they'll come back to the seller and say, okay, here's the things we want you to fix. So it's called a repair amendment. It's an amendment to the contract saying that the seller agrees to fix these items. This is a negotiable item. So you don't have to say we take it or we leave it. You can say, well, we'll do this, we won't do this. Important part to remember about the inspection process is when an inspector looks at a house, he's looking at it, inspecting it as if it were a brand new house according to the newest version of the codes. So if you've got a 30-year-old house or a 3-year-old house, it's not going to be perfect in every way. So both buyer and seller have to be reasonable in the things they're looking at. I like to say that if this is something that the seller should have fixed, sometimes you had a broken window in the kid's room and you've been thinking about fixing it for months and you just hadn't gotten around to it. Okay, well that's something that would commonly, you should have done it. So it's one thing to say, yeah, we'll fix that. There's things come in, sometimes the houses are real old, there's old wiring, somebody will come in and want you to replace all the wiring and bring it up to modern wiring. Again, any of this is negotiable. Whatever the buyer and seller want to do, you can do. But try to be reasonable in it and this is a point where, again, the buyer can back out. So if you're the seller and you're not willing to do anything on the repairs, then the buyer may back out on you because they're not getting the house that's in the shape that they want it to be, that they think is reasonable. But again, everybody hopefully can be reasonable in the process. You're not buying a brand new home, or if you're not buying a brand new home, then you don't expect it to be perfect. But on the other hand, if something major of consequence is damaged, particularly roofs, foundations, major issues, then those absolutely should be addressed. But again, you can negotiate. Maybe you got a good enough price when you bought the house under the contract that you don't care if there's a minor foundation issue that's going to cost $500 or $1,000 to repair. So you negotiate all that. Both parties will sign a repair amendment. Generally then, if both parties are happy, there's no real reason for the buyer to back out, then you're officially under contract. So in that 10-day period, you were under contract, but you weren't totally under contract. So during that remaining period, there are still ways that the buyer can get out of the contract, but they're a little more difficult. In that 10-day period, they don't have to have any reason, little reason, whatever, it doesn't matter, they can walk away. So we're into that period. Another issue that can come up is called a contingency. So say the buyer has another house property that they need to sell before they can buy this one. So they can negotiate, and this again is in the contract, negotiate a contingency offer. It said, okay, we want to buy this house for this amount of money pending us selling our house at X address. You give the address and all that is information that you present to the seller that you want to buy their house. So then they can consider that you can negotiate the length of time. You want 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, however long both parties are willing to agree to. So then you're under contract with a contingency. What happens then is, if everything goes along, the buyer sells their other property, then they close, you're fully under contract, and they'll close on this property. A lot of times you can even close the same day in a situation like that. If that doesn't happen, what can potentially happen as well is another buyer comes in a day or two later and offers a contract, said, hey, we want to buy this house, and we don't have a contingency. So what happens then? because to the seller, they would rather have the offer without a contingency, but they accepted the one earlier. Well, the way it's written into the contracts is that if the seller gets another contract that they would like to accept, then they notify the buyer with the contingency that, hey, we have another offer here that's not contingent on the sale of another property. We demand basically that you either remove your contingency, in effect agree to buy the house without selling the other one, or we'll put this offer contract in front of yours. So typically the person has about 5 days to make that decision. So if you're buying a house but you got to sell another one, then you have 5 days to say, okay, we need to make this a firm offer or we're going to lose out on this house. So that's another thing to be aware of for both buyer and seller that can complicate things. If the house doesn't sell real quickly for whatever reason, could be the house is bad, it's in a bad location, it's overpriced, or it could just be for whatever little reason no one can figure out, it's just not moving real quickly. So you got to be prepared for that and how that works into everything. That's about all the time I have today. Hope you've enjoyed this. RoyZesch.REALTOR, 325-268-0775. Give me a call. Thank you.